G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the Pumped on Property Show. Now, in today's episode, Simon and I are sort of playing with something different at the moment. So the concept of this episode is the secret to creating a passive income with property. But what we kind of did in prep for it was something a little bit different, which was sitting down completely independently of each other and going, well, based on the 6,000 conversations we've had with investors, the $500 million worth of property we bought, the 1,000 people that we bought for we're at 21, 22 properties that we bought between ourselves in the last 15 years as well. All of the books we've read, the podcasts we've listened to, the YouTube stuff, the courses that we've done. What would we do now, knowing what we know now, in terms of the three different phases of working towards financial freedom? So first phase being accumulation, where you buy the properties that will make you free. Second phase being consolidation or how to pay them off. Third phase being freedom and the lifestyle / passive income that we really want. So I've really got no idea what you're going to say, but obviously we have like a core strategy that we're both following.
Yeah.
But it'd be sort of interesting to see the differences in both of our styles as we move through this.
I think everybody wishes they had that hindsight, when we look back at the past and where we are today. I think it becomes quite easy to figure out what you should have done or what you should have been doing. And, that's what I guess, that's where my mind was going. It's like, how can we provide people with this hindsight, now that we've got collectively decades worth of experience, had more conversations with investors than most people on the planet. And you hear all these lessons over time from different experienced, successful investors, and you hear about, some of the mistakes that we have made and a lot of other people have made. And it's like, I think everybody's trying to avoid making those mistakes. We don't work so hard to then go and lose that money on a bad asset. So it's like, if we were to, I guess, wind back the clock a little bit and, start our journey again, this is kind of what we do. So,
I really like that because hindsight, like I have 15 years of hindsight now, and I've learned a lot from my own experiences and with my own money, good and bad. But I've learned just as much from the incredible people that are well further forward than both of us that we've spoken to and helped over the years as well. And so, yeah, it's exactly that. It's like, instead of everyone listening to this that's at 1 to 5 properties, sort of like doing what I did and fumbling my way through the second 10 years of my 15-year journey. That didn't make sense, but you know what I mean? This is more like, okay, cool, you're starting from scratch. Like, let's look forward based on hindsight and remember the future, if you know what I mean.
And I think like the most powerful thing that we can do as investors, and what I want to challenge everybody to try and learn how to achieve this is by learning through observation and, hearing these stories based on decades of experience, based on thousands and thousands of conversations, using this to learn how to implement your own strategy. And obviously you've got to personalize it based on your own situation, your own goals, the lifestyle that you want to be living. But, trying to learn through observation rather than learning through experience, because if you have to learn through experience, you're going to make those mistakes. But if you can learn through observation, you can maybe avoid making the same mistakes that everybody else seems to make.
I really like that. So kicking things off for your step one, which is the accumulation phase. And like I said, that's when you buy the assets, whether it's property, stocks, etc., that will make you free at some point in the future. For us, we're always working on like sort of a loose 15-year time frame. So what would you do if you're starting from absolute ground up today?
Yeah, so you obviously start with where you're at. Like some people are going to start with a budget of $500,000. Some people are going to start with a budget of $1 million. So you've got to start with where you're at. But for me, during that accumulation phase, it is absolutely imperative to focus on residential real estate. Based on the research that I've done, and I know nothing about trading the stock market or crypto or any of these other areas. So for me, it's property, always has been, always will be. I'll dabble in these other places, but they're not going to become...
Crypto's working at the moment for you.
Crypto's working at the moment, but it's still less than like 1% of my net worth. So it's still pennies. So it's residential real estate. And this is because typically if done well, you'll see higher capital growth rates through residential real estate. So I like buying houses, the best house that you can possibly afford in the biggest and best capital cities at the right stage of their real estate cycle. So looking at history, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne have been the top performing markets in Australia over the long term. There's a great case for Perth as well, been an incredible market if timed well, and then also the major regional markets. And that simplifies a lot of things, right? I'm refining it down from, multiple capital cities, multiple regional markets to just a handful of markets that I can become an expert in. And I can really understand those locations at a very deep, granular level, because then it can help me identify the hotspot within that particular market.
I love that. So there's, 8 capital cities, I think, something like that. And then there's, with the regional markets included, 19 markets that we like the look of personally.
Yep, exactly. So once you're in that market, depending on which one represents value at your stage as an investor, it's buying, like maximizing your capacity. So if I have my time over again, I bought my first property at 25, I would have bought it at 22 if I could have. So getting started as soon as I can and maximizing my capacity. So, getting the asset on the biggest piece of land as close to the city or as close to the water that you can possibly afford. And for me personally, I don't care about what the house looks like. I don't want a brand new house because I don't want to pay the premium for it. I don't want a beautifully renovated house. I want like the crappiest house on the best street, in the best suburb, in the best location. Because once again, history tells me that that is the asset that's going to perform better than all others in terms of long-term capital growth.
Yeah.
And in your accumulation phase, for me, it is all about growth.
Yeah.
Because that growth is what will give you choices in the long-term future.
So in this accumulation phase, like thinking about it for you and Taylor, like in real terms, how many properties would you have bought your own home in the accumulation phase? Like how many properties would you like to accumulate there to get to where you want to be? And I suppose this is less theoretical for you guys because you have completed your accumulation phase now. So what did it look like and what would you change about that?
So in the planning phases, it was 2 investment properties with granny flat potential. That was the intention. And I went out there and got those 2 properties and I thought my accumulation phase was done.
Yeah.
But then things change. And you got to adapt to those changes. So
you grow as a person, and the person that said, I want to, without any kids or major responsibilities, isn't necessarily the person that you are down the line once your knowledge, skills, experience and life stage changes as well.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about schools and holidays and, all of that stuff when you're a single person in your mid-20s that's like working hard, reading all of these books. Like you're kind of selfish and you're not necessarily thinking about those different things. But then as you start to think about that, it's like, okay, well, I need to go for a third property. Investment property with dual income potential, and then my own home as well. But I wasn't too concerned about my own home. Like it only was because it made sense based on where I was living. Like Sunshine Coast was in a growth phase of its real estate cycle. I could buy a property at an affordable price and, enjoy that. But if I were in Sydney, in the Sutherland Shire still, where a lot of my friends where we grew up still live, I wouldn't have been concerned in that accumulation phase about acquiring my own home. It would have been mostly about securing the properties that will provide me with the passive income in the future.
So you would have been more like a rent investor down there because it's so expensive to own.
Yeah, that's
and
exactly
I would have
right.
rented in Sydney at that point too.
But because it was affordable to buy on the Sunshine Coast in 2020, it was the right decision at that point in time, and we were in a financial position to make it happen. It's actually a funny story. We had all this money saved, and Tay and I were planning a big 6-month trip through South America and Central America.
Yeah, wow.
We were going to go, stuff it, let's go traveling. And we were planning this and we were looking at where we were going to go, but fortunately we hadn't locked anything in. And then we went away on that trip up to, where was it?
Cairns, Port Douglas.
Port Douglas. And COVID hit. And we're like, okay, well, what's this mean? And
Remember it just getting really weird really fast because we didn't have our phones up there or anything.
No one was watching the news. No one was on social media. No one had any idea what was going on. But then, you see, like, there was a chemist downstairs underneath the place we were staying at.
Yeah.
And then they had like these barricades up, and then the people working in the chemist had these like hazmat suits on, and we're like, what the hell is going on? And we're like, are we going to be able to get home, or are we going to be stranded? But anyway, COVID hit, and we're like, well, that sucks. We can't go on our trip anymore. We had all this cash saved up, and so we're like, well, we're not going to spend, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on this 6-month trip. You know, how about we, you know, look at buying another property, and we decided to do that. So hindsight, once again, it's like that COVID really like was a challenging period of time for everyone, but it kind of forced us to focus on the path that we were on at the time instead of like breaking that and spending all the money on the trip overseas. And so, you know, we were just like, cool, let's buy this property. And, you know, had of COVID not happened, then we probably would have gone on the holiday. We probably wouldn't have ended up in that house, and our life would be so different. It's so funny how things all come together. But that's sort of my accumulation. Like, it started with 2 houses, then, you know, quickly went to 3 plus our principal place of residence. And I'll talk about that portfolio more as we get through the different phases of this journey. But what about yourself? You know, if we think about your accumulation phase, you know, with this hindsight, with this awareness and experience, like, what would that look like if you had your time over again?
Yeah, like for me, the reason I do residential property as the foundation is 2 reasons. One is leverage. So I can put $1 in and get $5 to $10 back out with the banks. And the Australian government wants to back banks in Australia because it's the way that we're, you know, less than 2% of property that's created in a year is government backed. So they want private investors like you and I to actually build the stock for the future of Australia. And so the whole system is geared towards home ownership, which you talked about with the financial advisor, Alex, in previous episodes of the show recently, which were phenomenal. But, you know, one is leverage. So when I'm young, when I talk to Hayden, who's one of our team members and a good friend of ours, he's an accountant as well. Leverage is just so valuable for creating wealth as a young person when you've got time. You know, the example which I've talked about heaps lately is just if you've got 200K in the stock market at 8%, you've made 16K. If you've got 200K and you buy $1 million house, even at 5% that year in growth, you've made 50 grand. So 50 grand in year 1 versus 16. If you do that for 20 years straight, we're talking like a lot of money, exponentially better off. And it's like you might not always want to be in property long term because of land taxes, because of everything else. But short term, it's like if you can find properties that almost cover themselves or do like we chase, then, you know, property is just ticking away in the background and making money while you're sleeping. So leverage is one reason. And then when I read Simon Presley's 50-year review up until 2022, stating that Australian residential property had been one of the top performing assets globally in the last 50 years and very stable, growing by 8.2% a year.
We can feel that as well, can't you?
Without a doubt. Like this, or what do you mean?
Like just how expensive it is these days. You know, like to buy a home in Sydney, it's like 11 times the average annual salary. To buy a home in Brisbane, it's like 7 times the average annual salary. So it's just, you know, over that period of time, it's changed so much and got so much more expensive because, as you said, with the banking system being so pro property, and obviously the Aussie dream is to buy your own home and to live in your own home.
I looked at a chart the other day. It was a 30-year chart of every major developed nation in the world, like not every, but England, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Japan, America.
Yeah.
And it looked at like average household incomes versus average house prices. And Australia at some point broke away in a completely different projection to everyone else. So like Australia looked completely different to the other countries who were sitting very, very similar to those longer term 4 to 5 times average annual salaries type vibe.
Right.
That was just a little side note. So for my accumulation phase, owning my own home's always been an important part of my journey. But that's because I've always lived in and bought in places that were cheap when I bought them. So I don't think it would be if I was in Sydney or inner city Melbourne. But for Brisbane, Queensland, Sunny Coast, it made sense when I was buying. I always thought my foundation, if I was starting again, would just be 3 houses with 3 granny flats. I would have tried to have bought all of them for under 800K each, and I would have wanted $1,000 a week in rent from all of them. And across them, I would have wanted, with the brand new granny flat, at least 30 grand a year of tax benefits as well.
Yeah.
So I would have been going for growth, timing, cash flow, and tax benefits as well.
You're not asking for much, are you?
And that's what we want on every
We want to have our cake and eat it too, eh?
Man, if you can get everything, why not get everything?
And I know you can, because we've seen it, we've done it, we've lived it, and we've helped so many people achieve it.
Yeah, we're doing it every single week. Like, I know it's possible, but not if you follow the vanilla strategy that most people are following.
Yeah, and like you get a lot of pushback sometimes on the granny flats. Oh, do they sell well in the future? Oh, who's going to rent it? Rah, rah, rah. And, you know, all you got to do is look at our video of the granny flat walkthrough to see how functional these setups are. And it just feels like 2 neighbors.
I've sold 2 of them personally in my portfolio. Like, at one point I had 5 houses with 5 granny flats, and I've had 5 houses with 5 granny flats, not all at the one time. One sold in 3 days for 50 grand more than it was worth, and the other one sold in like 2 weeks in the middle of a shocking time to sell.
And they're all different ones as well. You know, you had your brand new one on the small block of land.
Like 249 square meters of land.
Exactly. And then you had like the traditional approach, the house with the granny flat in the backyard as well. So, you know, it really doesn't matter how you do it. And our client Dave from Sydney, like when he gets his properties revalued in Sydney, you know, his houses with granny flats have always kept up with the average property in that suburb. So it's had no negative impact on his capital growth.
Yeah, Michael Matusic's research sort of says the same thing. They actually sell in Brisbane at least over a 15-year period for a premium. So what I've realized is that I would have had less of this long-term approach if I was starting out again with what I know now, and more of a, you and I have been talking about this a lot in our business, personal lives, a seasonal approach to investing. So there's seasons as an investor where you can buy because your income or combined income is good. You've got the savings or equity in, and the banks are just like, hey man, have some money. And then there's periods where it's winter and it's time to rest because you've either done a lot and now you need to settle, or because you just can't do anything. And I've been through the not doing anything time for at least 12 years out of 15. I could not borrow $1. And so it's like when I get the little seasons, I go. But what I would do in my accumulation phase is quite quickly, like as quickly as I could, and you know, 4 properties starting from scratch is a pretty big ask. So that might take me 5 or 10 years to do if I was starting again. But once I'd completed that phase, then I'd rest for a period of time, and then I'd move on to another accumulation phase. And in my own portfolio, I've actually gone through in 15 years 3 accumulation phases and 3 sell down passive income realization phases. And I'm just going through, like, I've gone through my 3rd accumulation, and I'm now going through like the 3rd sell-off phase. And that's something I'll talk about more in consolidation and how to get there. But it has massively sped up my journey to getting to where I wanted to be.
Yeah. So, you know, sort of looking at those markets, because obviously over the last 15 years, we've seen, you know, Melbourne go through an incredible growth cycle. We've seen Sydney go through an incredible growth cycle. You kind of missed both of them, unfortunately.
I got Sydney, like I made wicked money down there. Like I tripled my money on my 2nd house down there. Like if I had have held my 1st one, I would have tripled it by now. But I still made a gain on that those 2 properties enabled me to go buy 4 others. So
yeah. And then Sunny Coast, so what you've recognized from your experience is like, you know, the cat's out of the bag. Property runs in cycles.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to identify which stage of that cycle we're in, where the best markets are to invest there, and then, you know, choose whether it's the right time to sell or continue holding. And how do you make that decision, like whether or not you should offload or keep an asset?
Look, I made those decisions really poorly in the past and still today. Like if I'm being honest, I'm like, my emotions have driven a lot of the sell-off phases. It's been more like less strategic in how I'm feeling, or more, I could not be fucked anymore waiting 15 to 30 years to get to where I want to be, and I just want to do it now. And so I'll sell down in order to bring what I really want into my life into the present moment.
Yeah, love it.
But I wish there was more of a like, this is a tactical approach to selling off. I just roll on debt position, how comfortable I feel like that is, what's going on with the global and local market, and then my intuition to that moment. But a lot of the times when I've sold, it's actually been really poor moments to sell. And had I held out for a bit longer, like a few of the properties in particular, like legitimately doubled or tripled within a few years after selling them. And I'm like, sheesh, I could probably be like $5 to $7 million better off now.
Heavy.
But whatever, like I'm also stoked and happy, and I wouldn't be here without it. But I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I'd probably create a better plan for the sell-off phase.
Yeah, cool. And I think like a lot of people probably assume that like these 3 phases are very 3 distinct phases of a journey and it only happens once. But, you know, what we've recognized is that things change, and, you know, whilst we do our best to make the most educated decision with our investments based on the info that we have right now, no one can predict the future. Like we didn't expect like Perth to do what it's done, Adelaide to do what it's done, Brizzy to do what it's done in this period of time. And so you got to roll with the punches. Well, I did, but not this hard, not this fast.
Oh man, like, you know, when we like, if you think about back to when we were in the Coolum office and we were reading Phil's stuff, and then you found that 50-year homely,
Yeah.
that 46 years. And then I remember sitting in there in between sessions with you and Ryan from On Property and going, okay, let's overlay the 18.6-year real estate cycle across the 50 years of data. And that's when my confidence massively started to grow around what could happen, because when we overlaid the previous 7 final years of the last cycle for Brisbane and Perth, both of them did 120% growth. And I was like, I 100% knew what was coming. I just didn't 100% believe it enough to go and do anything about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we'll just talk about that off camera with my crypto investing as well. It's like, we're just gathering experience at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
like, I wish I like, we have that belief, but, you know, do you believe it's so strong enough that you're going to throw all of your
I was still a
cash at-
pussy at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I was still like, I didn't know the history enough to understand what would happen. I knew I could see it statistically. I could see what had happened in the past. I knew it was coming, but I was just too much of at that time, I actually recorded a video, which I put up for 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, it got like 600 views, and it was called All Investors Are Fucking Pussies. It was basically me speaking to myself,
ranting.
having the biggest rant, because at the time I was like, I can see what's coming and everyone's missing it. And then I'm like, this is the worst piece of content I've ever created. I'd probably be an entire by now because of it, and I pulled it straight off.
Or else like, this guy got it. He said it back then.
It's so funny. But yeah, like now that I see the movement of money, and we'll talk about this cycle in a moment, I also did another YouTube video, which I recorded yesterday, which will come out shortly, on the 18-year cycle and
Yeah.
how that works in a deeper way. But yeah, like it's very, very murkily clear now, isn't it? It's like
It really
I don't
is.
know what's going to come and how it looks.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what happens over the next 5 years, and then, you know, really go hard as I possibly can. Like, I don't want to look back at myself in 15 years from now and be like, you pussy. I want to look back and be like, you've made smart, educated decisions based on the information that you had at that point in time.
I love that. So moving to the second part for you then, like the consolidation phase.
Yeah.
So you've got your home, you've got your 2 to 3 properties, but then you're also got a heap of debt, and you've also got a lot of responsibility. Like it's not like the old days where it's like, I might work, I might not. It's like, I'm carrying so much
Forced
debt
to.
and a family that I'm locked in here.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you go from locked into freedom mentally, and how do you go from locked into freedom financially through owning them outright?
Well, look, the first thing is it takes time. So you do have to be patient. And like, I think a lot of people have this idea of wanting to be financially free early, depending on where you're starting will depend on what that horizon is. But for me, if I was to say like, you know, 15 years from 25 is 40, and it's like, whilst that would be cool, I don't think it's necessary that I need to be financially free at 40, because I'm not going to stop working.
Sure.
So like, since having a family and children, my time horizon has changed massively, and it's extended out a lot further than where it would have been back in my 20s. So I think just realizing that it does take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It does take discipline and sacrifice, and just focusing on the fundamentals. And there is fundamentals that you'll talk about in the consolidation phase. So I'll absolutely do all of those things at different times. But for me personally, in the consolidation phase, what I'm doing is adding value to the properties that I accumulated during the accumulation phase. So as I said, buying the worst house on the best street, you can't continue to hold the worst house on the best street. Like, you need to add value to that property. So for me, it's a combination of renovations, knockdown rebuilds, adding granny flats, building duplexes, doing things like this to maximize the potential of that particular piece of land. So accumulation, I've kind of secured the assets, land banked those assets. Consolidation, now I'm coming back to add value to them.
And cash flow and tax benefits and stability, right?
Exactly. So, one of them at the moment, I'm building a dual occupancy property in the backyard. So fortunately, the property is on a big block of land, and, I can now build a 3-bed, 2-bathroom home in the backyard.
And separately title both of them, right?
And separately title both of them, separately rent both of them, 2 completely separate houses on like a battle axe block. And then, what I'm going to be doing with that is I'll use that to then fund another development on the first property that I purchased, which I'll have to knock down and rebuild.
Okay.
And when I knock down, rebuild, I'm going to build a big duplex as well. So then I'll have, these properties have gone from one really crappy house to 2 quite nice houses.
Love that.
Then the property that I'm living in at the moment, it's serving a purpose. We love living there. It's our dream home for this stage of life, but it's not our forever home.
Yep.
So that will actually become an investment eventually. And fortunately, that one also has development potential.
With
So
Duplex King.
when I bought all these properties in the beginning, none of them were that. None of them had the capacity to do a duplex.
They've all been rezoned one by one.
They've all been rezoned one by one, and that's just smart investing on our part.
Buy 600 plus square meter blocks, and everything in Sydney and Melbourne has almost been rezoned on that land size now.
Exactly. So I'll be doing that, and then the intention is to, upgrade the principal place of residence at some point in time. And my philosophy has shifted more to these property developments. So for me, consolidation is all about finding undervalued opportunities, buying them at low prices, adding significant value to them, selling them for a profit, and then using that profit to pay off the debt on my principal place of residence first and foremost. And then also a small portfolio of residential properties. So like, if I can get to 150 gross passive income per year, which based on your example, if I can get 3 properties all renting for $1,000 per week owned outright, plus my PPR, that's what I'm working towards. How long that takes, I don't know. Could take 10 years.
You're 8 years in now.
Yep.
Yeah, like I would put money on it that it happens 7 years from now, worst case. Like, I know it's hard to see that right now with where you're at, but I just can see this, it begins building momentum, and it's very, very difficult at the start, and you give it some time, growth, selling a couple of assets, buying a few more, selling them to pay off debt. Like, it's just going to happen that way.
Yeah, so I'll keep doing these property developments until I've reached that reality, and I'll talk more about my freedom phase when we get there. But property development for me, is going to become a massive part of my strategy. But that's not where I started. I think that needs to be heard, because a lot of people hear about the opportunities of these developments and they just gravitate towards them because the numbers are incredible. But high risk, high reward.
Big time.
It definitely isn't where I started. It isn't where I would tell any first timer or somebody with low experience to start with that. It is something that you work your way out to. Like, I've worked in the buyer's agency for almost 8 years full time now. I've read every book that you can think of about Australian property investing. I've followed CoreLogic, Michael Matusik, SQM, Market Briefs, Property Share Market Economics, like all of these forums.
Of all these people while they've gone through their projects as clients and actually been the project manager on them as well.
Tens of thousands of hours of experience. And it's like, only because of that am I ready to step into that next phase of my journey. And even for you, like, it's not even necessarily something that you're super passionate about. It's just, for me personally, it's something that I love doing. And so, you know, it's just my personal strategy based on my experience, my stage of life, my knowledge, and my assets as well.
I love that. And I think it's important to note that property development is super feasible if your buy price is good.
Yep.
And really unfeasible if it's not. And so these assets were picked up at pretty much half the price.
2018, 2020, 2021, and I'm only just starting my first one in late 2024.
And they're all effectively doubled without you even doing major stuff to them outside of your own home. And so I think it's important to note as well that, like, that looks really profitable on a 400K buy, but not as profitable on a 900K land buy.
Exactly.
And so it's important to note that there are some really, really good duplex opportunities in Brisbane at the moment, in South Brisbane, Logan, and the South Brisbane beaches in Redland Bay. But they're bloody expensive too. They're certainly not like a first property, go make it happen type vibe because of the risk and the debt levels on them too.
Yeah, like $2.5–3 million total project cost in some instances is, you know, not for the faint-hearted, and mine aren't costing that amount of money at all. If they were, I wouldn't be able to do them.
For sure.
So that's my personal plan, and, you know, I think this consolidation phase is something that I'll do forever. Sure. You know, I won't, once I get to freedom, I don't think I'll ever stop buying undervalued properties, adding value to those undervalued properties, realizing the potential of that land, and then, you know, either selling it for a profit or keeping it for the passive income. But what about yourself? Like, because I do all the things that you are going to talk about as well. I call it the boring way, but the necessary way, because, like, unless you consolidate the debt, you're never really going to be living off a passive income.
That's right. So I suppose in the consolidation phase, there's two parts. There's the eating your veggies because they're good for you. And then there's, like, for me, the meat, like, where I want to be spending my time. And so as a kid, like, at dinner every night, I used to eat my veggies before I ate the good part, or, like,
Still do
now. And so it's just, I suppose, delaying a bit of that gratification and doing the things that we know that are great for us.
Yeah.
So the 4 things that are great for us as investors in consolidation phase, which I generally do. I don't do this first one unless interest rates are really low, and that's principal and interest. So everybody's got a different opinion on, should I be P&I, should I be interest only? Talk to your financial advisor, broker, and accountant about it. But for me personally, when interest rates are high, or we're at dangerous parts of the economic cycle in terms of downturn potential.
Got there.
I'm interest only. The reason I go interest only when rates are high is because I want to control my asset base and reduce my cost base. The reason I do it when we're heading into dangerous territory like COVID, we talked about that in 2017, 18, 19, the mid-cycle slowdown was coming. It would be something that we had no idea what it would be. But we knew what it would do to property prices, sentiment, and stock prices over a period of time. Now we know that at some point down the line, there's going to be a GFC style event, I don't like to use the word Great Depression, but definitely a recession coming through. And so the reason I go interest only into that phase is to protect my income so that I'm not for any reason except I don't want to sell properties when no one wants to buy them because they're all scared. So P&I is a great one. If you're shitty at saving money, P&I.
I might just add to P&I as well. It's to go on to that. It's like, if your rent could cover the principal and interest repayments and the holding costs, for me personally, and once again, just got to talk personally, I would always go P&I. So if I don't need the cash flow from the investments today, which you'll talk about in a second. So if my P&I repayments plus, like, my property management fees and all of those holding costs can be covered, then of course I'm going to do it. But if I'm in a negatively geared position, that's where I think a little bit more outside the box of different ways to maximize my income and reduce my expenses.
And this is what's really cool. Like, even though Simon and I have really similar thoughts on property, the way to get there is personalized. Like, you like P&I and developing, I like interest only and timing. And we both love timing too, actually. But it's like there's different ways to go from A to B based on your personal risk profile, how your money psychology, how the financial position you're in. Like at times I couldn't do anything for 3 years. At other times I could buy 5 properties in a year and then do nothing for years after it. So I really like that, bro. And I think for most people, P&I over 30 years is going to get the job done.
Yeah, so if you start at 30 and you have it on P&I,
60, you're done. Worst case.
60, you're done. But how do we speed that up?
So there's a little bit extra. So let's say that you've got 3 investment properties and you choose to pay $200 a week off each of them. So $600 a week, 30 grand a year. For a lot of people, that is massive and it's not achievable. Like for me, for most of my journey, it wouldn't have been. For me now, I could do that if I actually committed to doing that. I like paying myself a certain amount first into an offset account. Other people like paying $100 or $50 or $300 a week off each property off the home loan. Whichever way you want to do it, the reason I paid into offset is because I want to get access to that money for more deposits or partner properties when I want it. And I don't want to have to ask the bank back for redraw money, because when things are good, they lend it back. When things are really shit and you really want the money, they don't unlock the redraw, just facility disappears for a period of 2 years.
And this is a long time. Like consolidation for most people is going to take minimum 10 years, up to 20 years, up to 30 years. So it can change. Like an example, I guess, in that, like a little extra, it's like some years you might have a wedding, a honeymoon, you might be having a baby and going to a single income. You might want to upgrade your car, buy a caravan, go on a holiday. Like we want to be living our life as well.
100%.
And so those years you may not have much extra to contribute, but then we all have good years, where you have maybe bunkered down a little bit. You're not traveling, you're not spending big money on any of these big events. And so they're the years where you can go, I'm going to double down on my little bit extra and go hard and pay off as much as I possibly can. So
I like
just,
that.
that fluctuates and comes and goes in seasons depending on what's happening in your life personally as well. And like not getting up yourself if one year you don't pay off much debt because you have had a big event on.
Yeah, and if you're on P&I anyway, you paid off a significant amount of debt without noticing it. But 10 grand a year, $200 a week for 15 years is 150K. $600 a week or 30 grand a year for 15 years is 450K. So this little bit extra, which is pretty much like, as an investor, when you're buying, you're in the habit of saving money for your deposit. And, normally you're saving a lot more than you want to be saving, and it's at the expense of your lifestyle. But then, if you're saving $500 a week or $1,000 a week now, and as you move into the little bit extra phase, take that down to a half or a quarter. So your lifestyle for the trips, for the weddings, for the caravans, for your lifestyle is great, but you're also consistently moving forward. I'm much, much, much better at paying myself a dollar amount every single week. And sometimes that's literally been like $20. Sometimes that's been 5 grand in a week. Like it really depends on what I can do. And I just ebb and flow it based on like my life at that stage. Like sometimes you have a great month and we make some bonuses. Some of that money goes away. Sometimes you have a really shit month and you've lost money and it's like, okay, I'm glad I had the money sitting there for the safety net. So the third one is surplus income. A lot of investors are looking at things so short term that they're not getting the bigger picture. So the day we buy is the worst the cash flow on a property should be.
Always.
Outside of variable events that come through for a small season. And so as your debt goes down and the rent goes up, we end up in a position over 15 years where there should actually be a pretty strong passive income regardless of rates. And what I do with that is I get all of that money from all the properties paid into one offset account. All the expenses paid out of that one account for the properties, and whatever's left, I call the surplus income, surplus rent.
You just
and
leave
that
it
just
in there.
goes, well, for me, I leave it in there in an offset account. For other people, they might that aren't great at saving, pay it annually or monthly straight off the home loan debt.
Yeah, I love that.
I set up one of those surplus income accounts where everything went into a year and a half ago, and I think I've got $89,000 in there right now. just from the properties. It's not money that I've put in there personally at all. So it's not quite enough for me to like really live the way that I want to live, but it covers phone bills, electricity,
Everything counts.
everything. All of my base living costs are pretty much covered now from that.
Yeah.
But I don't take that money. I pay it off the debt, or it's like, hey, I need to renovate, to sell. I've got maintenance items. Like it all comes out of there, and it's not stressing me out week to week.
Love that.
Because as you said, we're still working. Most people listening to this are going to be working even if they had 100 grand of financial freedom, passive income today.
100%.
The next one, number 4, is phenomenal. Like I said before, the Australian government loves helping investors as much as the media loves bashing us. And the whole system is set up for you to own your own home, to be free in the future, to take the burden off the pension, and to buy assets. And they even give us these phenomenal things like negative gearing and tax benefit right now, which could change. But you know,
While they're there though.
across the depreciation on my properties alone, I think it's 65 or 72 grand a year.
Might add that you've had a very strong strategy for new properties too.
I've had a massive strategy geared towards the tax
Depreciation.
benefits, because I'm like, well, why wouldn't I get everything?
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't always like that. My first 9 properties were all old because
Yeah.
I couldn't
That's
afford
all
to
you could afford.
buy, develop, build, or do anything a bit more creative.
Yeah.
But the tax benefits are phenomenal. And if you're getting 2 grand a year or 70 grand a year, I know people getting hundreds of K a year.
Wow.
Like, what do you do with that money? Well, a lot of people waste it. But what if you had a strategy that every time it comes in, straight off the home loan or straight into the offset account if you're a great saver?
And this is what I was referring to before about, you know, I don't need the cash flow right now, especially if I'm still working full time. You know, generally, if you follow the barefoot investor model, it's like you're paying yourself some mojo money, and like
Mojo money.
you're enjoying your lifestyle today. But it's also like you don't need those tax benefits. You don't need that positive cash flow today. So delaying the gratification, pushing that into an offset account allows you to speed up that debt reduction phase and realize financial freedom so much sooner.
I love that. And it's so true. And, you know, a lot of people, they're so much more diligent than I would be with this. Like, I know there's the whole FIRE community movement, and
It's just full sacrifice and hustle.
and I have been through that phase as an investor, but I didn't feel like it because I was so motivated. It wasn't kind of like I'm doing this to just whip myself on the back. It was because I was so motivated to get these deposits to get going. But I still feel like I had the sickest lifestyle all the way through. What I think is a cool way to do it, and a lot of our clients do, is like, if you get a 15 grand balloon for your property in tax every year, or 10 grand a year in surplus, maybe like put 75% towards your debt reduction and grab 25% for the family holiday or for the trip or for the mojo money you're talking about. So I think it's just figuring out what matters to you and where you want to go.
Yeah.
For me, then, that sort of gets the like really boring stuff out of the way.
Yep. But it's, you know, boring works.
Plain veggies are gone.
Like it was a couple of years ago now, I was talking to you and one of our mates, Matt from Sydney, who's, you know, both really successful investors, and I was getting itchy because I hadn't done a project in a while. And I'm like, I'm thinking of selling some properties and going investing in the States. And,
Oh, that's
you know,
right, yeah.
both of you were kind of just like, nah, man, like, and Matt especially, because he'd done that. He'd sold his properties in Australia to invest in the United States. And, you know, they're just like, both of you are like, look, Simon, as unsexy as it is, the boring way is what works. And,
Yeah.
you know, I was listening to this crypto podcast this week, and here's the same thing. Is like trying to buy and sell and move money around all the time. You just miss out on everything. It's just like, buy when you can afford to, buy when things drop off, and then, you know, over time it'll compound and grow exponentially. But
I love that.
boring is boring, but boring is necessary.
You know, when I realized that like the fun in my life didn't have to come through my assets,
100%.
that the assets were there to create clarity, freedom, peace in my future, and I wasn't getting my like fix and dopamine from property, then it was like, cool, like this is a business and I want the business to make money consistently, short, medium and long term. then it was like, well, my lifestyle can become the fun. Like you want to play with shit, muck around with your health, like go on holidays, like learn new skills, hang out with your family more, like cut a day off your work week, like take every school holidays off with your kids, like play
100%.
with the stuff that brings you meaningful joy. Like I was reading Meditations for Mortals a couple of days ago, and one thing really stood out for me, which is like, we spend so much time distracted thinking that we've got to do these things, and I'm the king of this. But it's like, what about just focusing on less stuff and a small amount of stuff that's meaningful for you?
And I think the accumulation phase, it is that as well. Like there is those dopamine hits and there is like, you're taking action and you're reaping the rewards of that hard work and sacrifice and hustle and discipline and all of those positive things. But then you transition into consolidation and it slows right down. So for me and Hayden, we got to this point where, and I'm sure you as well, where it's like, we've been doing so much for so long, and then we hit this thing. It's like, where's the next project? And your mind tricks you thinking that you need another project. And I think a lot of our clients and a lot of investors fall into this trap of just being like, I need to do more. Externally, it's going to make me happier, but no, it's like actually transition those projects into, I guess,
Surf trips to Indo.
surf trips to Indo. Yeah, exactly. Trips around Australia, surf trips to Indo, and your surfboard.
Just coat hanger it onto some other stuff that pretends like it's going to fit you as well.
Oh, one day we'll get it, hopefully.
Brain loves dopamine, man. It just feed it.
It does. Just
Feed it with meaningful things. Like, why not? Like, we're wired towards reward, pleasure, pain. Like, why not just know that?
Let it happen.
Feed the things that are meaningful, values-based things.
just hopefully they're healthier for you.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I'm in the arena.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be like the Winston Churchill thing, like in the arena, bloody, bashed up and bruised, but smiling at 90 or 100 going, man, I didn't miss that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all worn out.
Yeah.
Like, good.
Yeah, I've lived a full life.
100%. So now we get into what I call like the fun pieces of consolidation.
Yep.
So I've got my home, I've got my 2 to 3 assets that give me my 100 to 150K per year of income 15 years from now. And, you know, some people will just go, cool, I'm okay with that. And that's completely fine. Like, if you want financial freedom in 30 years, pay principal and interest. If you want it in 20 years, do some of the things we talked about. If you want it in 10 to 15, then
those
option, get some more dopamine debt, get in some more debt,
Find these projects.
build a castle on sand and just...
I just think of Saudi Arabia when you say that.
build a palm tree island in the GFC and then let it sink.
And then this new one that's going to be, 1.8 kilometers high? You
Build a whole global campaign called Neom and then don't deliver on it at all.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. Like, I love it. And so whatever you need to fix your thing,
Coat hanger.
someone was stressing out.
So what's your extra thing that you like to do at this consolidation phase? It is a hell of a lot more fun.
So it's important here at the right time, because we don't want to build on sand. We want to build on stone. We don't want to let our anxiety and our need for more control the consolidation phase. So this is when, like, the old biblical stuff, whether it's the Tao, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity, whatever, seek your team of advisors. Like, this is really when you need smarter people around you, because this is where risk starts to
And you can get a false sense of confidence.
Well, how many people were sitting at 3% interest rates thinking this is normal? Now it's at 7.
Me.
I know the long-term trend on interest rates is 6.2% a year for 100 years in Australia, yet I leverage right up at 3%. And then it's like, well, what happens when you get to a stage of the cycle where they won't let you go interest only for another 5 years, where you can't refinance, where you can't flog something off because there's no buyers, because they're all scared like COVID. So this is really like sensible investing with that team of people.
Who do we need in that team of advisors?
You know, I've never worked with financial planners, but I hear they can be great.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of clients who are financial advisors and a lot of people I know that are bawling, and I seek them for specific financial advice. I heavily rely on the accountant, the mortgage broker, solicitors, property managers. And then I start heavily, even more relying on data. Spreadsheets, looking at best case, worst case scenarios year by year, and just getting a sense of like one of like my original older mentors who's no longer in my life, but he always said, know to the dollar your worst case scenario. That things not working out. Personal life, business, property life, three things. And it just gives you a comfort of like, this is break even and this is worst case. So what float do I need to get through bad times? But this is where partner properties come in. So for me, if I was doing it all again, I've got my 4 properties set up. Then I go buy partner properties. So what this is exactly what you've done. Maybe you can give the example actually of like how you use that partner property in the beach of Brisbane to speed up simplifying your life faster.
Yeah, well, once again, just buying undervalued locations at the right time in that real estate cycle and adding value to it. So I know something that you would probably get around is like finding like a really cool piece of land really close to the water with like an 80-year-old shack on top of it, and then maybe looking at bulldozing that house and then rebuilding what actually should be on that land, like a big double-story beautiful house, like focusing on high income earners, high quality demographics that have the money to buy that off you at the end of the project, and, you know, working through that and then maybe selling it. So,
and it's like, how do you find that? And it's like, is it giving off Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes or not? And then it's like, if it's not, then it's probably overvalued. And the train's hanging. Do you remember when we walked through? I was like, what's been going on here? I was like,
seriously, you know, my property, you walk through and downstairs there was like 6 different rooms and they're all danky and moldy and gross. And it's like, I walked through it with Tay from Sydney, indoctrinated into that lifestyle, and she's just like,
we are not buying this. Babe, come and check out my pink tank.
You know, it's that. Also, like, just renovating. So Crystal and Matt, our sister and our brother-in-law, like, he's a builder, she's an investor, you know, marrying these two together, and they've flipped like 3 or 4 properties now and made big coin in a short period of time. So it's just doing fun projects like that where it's mostly driven by short-term growth.
And even with your partner property strategy, it was like you timed Brisbane well. I think that one, the pink house, was 19. All you did was hold it, give it a brief tidy up, and then move it on.
Brief tidy up.
Like, very brief. Did you do anything, or you just?
I did what I needed to keep it rentable.
Yeah. So these partner properties, right? There's a whole movement of never sell, and I get it, because selling destroys your long-term wealth position.
And you talk to an accountant and they're like, you can't sell because of CGT.
Yeah, massively reduces your average annual returns as well, because you've got the entry, holding and exit costs. So it's a shocking strategy for wealth creation. So for people that want to be super wealthy or free in retirement, actually there's two camps there. There's the super wealthy in retirement, which I fully get. And then there's the just stable in retirement. Now, if you're only going to do 1 or 2 properties for retirement, never sell. If you want to be super wealthy in retirement, accumulate assets that will enable you to do that. But if you want to be financially free like we both do in our 30s, 40s, 50s, I can't save the money fast enough to get to where I want to be. I cannot pay off my debt by doing the veggies fast enough. So for me, an example, in 2021, I bought a property in Mooloolaba for 1.1 mil. I think, roughly. I put a 20% cash deposit down using money from another property that I'd sold before that. And then literally this year, I sold it. What did I sell it for?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Yeah, 1.4.
There's like 3 years.
Somewhere, this is so bad to say, like, and I do know the numbers, but it was somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6 million.
Yeah.
But it was a good enough chunk where I'm like, I owed the bank a lot of money on that property. I did not touch the joint. Like, I remember one time.
Just pure timing.
Bought it, sold it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to pay a monster amount of tax on this property, obviously. I paid like the entry fees, the stamp duties. I paid a fortune, like
holding costs,
40 grand to the dude to sell it for me. But I'm still going to be left with 200 or 300K net, which I'm now using to pay off another property basically debt-free that I bought ages ago with low debt. And so these partner properties can massively, massively speed up your debt reduction.
I think it's also leaning into your skills as well. Like, you know, you've got decades of experience as an investor, so you know how to time markets really well. Crystal and Matt, you know, Crystal's got that really nice design understanding and like investment understanding. And then Matt's got the building experience. He's a chippy by trade. So he can use his skill set and his network to be able to, you know, add value to that. But then I think about, you know, our brother-in-laws that run a building company, and it's like, well, they can build at really affordable prices. So maybe the knockdown rebuild strategy is best for them. If you're a chippy or a tradie, maybe the renovation strategy could be a good one for them. Or if you're an experienced investor that knows how to identify undervalued locations that have got short-term growth potential, you can focus on doing that. Or maybe you're like me, that's, you know, a bit passionate about development, and you look at trying to get into some property development as well. But these partner properties are all about like leaning into your skill set, leaning into your network, and using that to your advantage.
Without a doubt. And I think, you know, a really good example of if you're not active or you don't have the skills, then just imagine going to Perth in 2022 and selling now. Like most people made 60%.
I talked to a family the other day. They unfortunately sold a house for $1.1 million a few years ago.
In Perth?
No, this was 18 months ago in Perth. And then they just saw that it resold again for $1.4 million less than 2 years later.
You know, every day, like, do you remember the house that I built on the water years ago? I sold that house because I was freaking out about the market at that time for $850K. And I talked to my neighbor, Kieran the doctor, who's also a client of ours, and he said the houses in the street now, like a few years later, are selling for 2.1, 2.2.
Oh, heavy.
And so it's just like, the thing is, I don't care. Like,
Time and a place.
100%. I got the money back. I moved it onto more assets.
Yeah.
And what's the point of looking back? But it's also like, good lesson. Like, good lesson. Don't let the emotion next time override the logic of the decision.
Yeah. And it's you know, you got to be comfortable with those decisions. And like 100% of the time, if you sell a property, down the line, it's going to be worth more. Accept it, cop it on the chin. And if you want to hold it for the long-term wealth creation, hold it. But if it's serving a purpose to sell, you know, you just got to accept that it's serving a purpose.
You know what check I've put in place to, like, a logical check, and I've never talked about this on camera or even with you, but what I do before I sell now, if I had have looked back at that knowing what I now know about, okay, so let's say that Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, when you look at total returns in 50 years divided by years, did 9.5% each. Brisbane did a bit better. Then you go, well, at that time, if I had have looked at Bottigna, which was the suburb, it had only done 4.5 or 5% in the 10 years leading up to that time. Now I will not sell a property that hasn't done somewhere between 8 and 13%, because when it's done 8 to 13%, it's been fully shaken. Like when you sold the Pink House recently, or I sold Mooloolaba, both suburbs had done 9 to 10% a year in the 10 years. And it was like, okay, it's doubled in value in 10 years. That's fucking twice as good as it normally does these days. I think it's rinsed that's like capacity, or at least some of it.
Yep.
And so it's just like a healthy sanity check. And I could have just Googled Bottigna plus average annual growth rate or 10-year growth rate. And that number immediately, like if you're not being forced to sell, if there's no strong reason to sell and the market's stable or still going up, that's a really nice little just, pulse check as to like, am I making a mistake here that I'm going to regret? Because I could have held that property. It had like 500, 400 grand debt on it. It would rent for $1,000 a week, and selling out at 2 mil would have been freaking awesome.
Hindsight.
Yeah.
We don't have it.
Keep moving on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, for me, my strategy for partner properties moving forward is buy, hold, sell based on timing. And then while I might not want to subdivide on my own, I'd 100% put something together with you because you enjoy it. The other thing I'm passionate about is like buying really big piece of land close to capital cities and building resort style beautiful homes on acreage blocks and selling them to a client of one. Which is super fucking deadly.
Risky.
but super, super high reward if you can like create something that no one else can create.
Yeah.
Which, as you move further forward in your journey, like you and I could never have talked about those or developing in the
No
past.
way.
It was basically buy the worst house in the best street, which will still be a part of the strategy.
You know, I think what I mentioned in the accumulation phase is like you maximize your capacity for that point in time. It's like that's why my first development is a really affordable entry level one. But, you know, fast forward 10 or 15 years, I'm sure I'll be doing some pretty spectacular things. And it's like you got to work with what you can afford and you don't want to bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah, like I remember people that we've seen when I was first meeting them, they were like at my age now doing, you know, subdivisions. And now they're doing like, I'm looking at them and they're doing
Land
100,
developments.
200, like dwelling everything's
Yeah.
or full land developments or whatever. So it's, you know, whatever happens.
Keep my fingers crossed.
I hope that happens for you, because I don't want, I'll like work for you.
We'll see. It'll
I'll
all
just make
be
it
a
feel
fun
nice for
journey.
you.
Um,
Hang on a sec. Before we move out of
cool.
consolidation, I just wanted to talk about a 6th and 7th thing in consolidation, which I personally have been doing. So consolidation is basically realizing you don't have to be financially free to be done. You can be financially peaceful, or financial peace is when you've got the assets that will make you free. You've just got to pay them off. But as you start to increase your lifestyle and start living like that mojo thing more, we really want to be looking at the personal expenses in our lives and doing what we can to cut them. So in my house, it's like no more than 2 streaming services at a time, for example.
love that.
If I've got like 3 phones, work phone, personal phone, wife's phone, I could be paying like I used to with Vodafone or Telstra. No disrespect, better service with both of those companies than what I'm on now.
Arguably.
I was paying $100 a month. Now I'm paying 17 to 25 with Audi Mobile, who's run by Telstra anyway.
Yeah.
I put on a big solar system so I don't pay electricity anymore.
Yeah.
Like just those little things that you can do. You know, you might shop at farmers markets for organic stuff versus the supermarket, which is saving you 40% of what it would cost at like supermarket level, because it's like you're not paying for the brand, if you know what I mean.
I think this is just a constant, and that can become a bit of a game as well.
Can be. Some people froth on that stuff.
Tay is obsessed with
Tay
like
loves that
keeping
stuff.
costs low and maximizing income, and I'm so grateful that she loves that, because I'm more like Lisa, and I'm like, just don't worry about it. We'll be right. We'll be right. I'll just work a bit harder. But like you and Taylor are both like, no, like we can do this. Let's just do it.
Yeah, like other options that I've found, like the electricity provider or the home loan provider. Like if you're sitting on $2 million of debt right now and you can get a 1% discount, we're talking a 20 grand a year saving to literally spend a month signing documents and another month waiting for them to slide over. So all of these things matter. And I think during my accumulation phase, because I was so into the next thing and buying, I wasn't looking at those things. But as I moved to how can I get rid of this debt, I really started to think about it. And that sort of leads into my 7th thing, which is something that my accountant's been giving me advice on. And that is diversification of assets. So I'm heavy leveraged property, and our business is obviously just doing one thing, which is property, which means we're very susceptible to downturns in the economy because it affects sentiment, which affects property prices and the ability to grab money and buy stuff. So I started to think more now, like I'm in this for 30 years anyway. If I can put some money into super, which only costs 15% instead of 45% in my tax rate, or what have stocks done longer term? Like instead of just now that I'm not going to buy more properties, I sell one. It's like, well, I could have that cash in the bank, but if I have 0 debt, then I'm not going to put it in 3% bank loan, like bank fee, so that the bank can lose me money while I fix it in their account and they can go and make 20% on it through credit cards. Like I want to learn more about that stuff, which is why I've been like reading heavily again and reviewing history in a different way. So just those are things to think about, talk about with your accountants, advisors, but reducing expense, reducing taxes, diversifying things as you move through your journey is all part of the fun of learning new stuff as well.
I love that so much. It's so true. I'm just so far away from that at this point as
Yeah,
well.
100%. And it's like the cool thing about both of us doing this is we're at different stages of this journey, and so different
Ideas,
steps are
yeah.
required and ideas come out.
Yeah, for sure. So
Freedom for you.
like freedom is the end goal, obviously. You know, financial freedom to me is really simple. It's owning my own home
Yep.
plus
Debt free.
2 to 3 investments. It's not necessarily about the number of investments, it's the amount of money. So it's $150,000 of gross passive income per year.
Yep.
No, after costs, that's really going to come down to probably about 80 or 90.
Yep.
And, you know, that allows me to consider myself financially free.
Yep.
That's not life-changing money. You know, that's not going to allow me to, you know, take my family on a ski holiday every single year. Like, it probably isn't even going to allow me to like send my kids to the best private schools. But it's going to cover the base levels and allow me to live my lifestyle that I want, which is what financial freedom is all about for me. It's about living a lifestyle that's conducive with happiness for me.
Love that.
So it's allowing me to spend more time with family. So, you know, being there in the important years for the kids and, you know, supporting them and not being stressed out or not having to work too much and like really being a present dad.
Love that.
So it's all about creating more time with family and friends. Absolutely. Doesn't cost much money to just be around. Second to that is like health and food. So like being able to have a sauna and a nice bath and a home gym and use those regularly, or being able to get a personal trainer around every now and again to refine my technique and improve and push me to go a little bit further.
Love that.
You know, being able to go get a massage if I've been training super hard, or be able to like go and do like a recovery session somewhere. And, you know, all of these things cost money. And with the food side of things, like being able to stop at the organic local farmers markets and being able to go to the local farmer and getting the most amazing grass-fed, organically produced meat that I possibly can. And that costs more than, you know, the shitty packet stuff that you can get from the major like shops like Woolies and Coles and things like that. So that's a huge thing. Like being able to get like water, like the highest quality water that you can buy delivered to my house. I don't have to drink tap water. You know, all of these things are super important to me. And like those things, once again, it's not like I need a ridiculous amount of money to be able to allow myself to do that.
Yeah, I like that.
Then it's travel. Like it's being able to go overseas on a search trip. Like it's been dead flat for 2 weeks. Like I would love to, in the future, be in a position where I can just go,
We're going to Bali to...
well, there's a swell in Bali I'm flying over, or I'm flying down to the wave pool in Sydney, or I'm flying down to Sydney and driving down to the south coast in New South Wales, or I'm driving to Melbourne and flying to Melbourne and driving to the surf coast because there's a swell down there. And it's like, or like if it's snow season, far out, it just dumped 50 centimeters overnight and there's another storm coming, I'm flying down, I'm going snowboarding. Like those things
Sounds amazing.
are really important to me, and being able to do those extended trips, like taking the kids to America to take them to Disneyland and, you know, go do all the theme parks over there, or like taking the kids to Europe and showing them the history of civilization and, you know, being able to go to really cool places and explore that. Like all of these things are important, and it's about getting to a point where I've got enough passive income or enough income to sustain and support that lifestyle.
I love that.
Now, whilst the debt-free PPR and 150K of gross passive income, maybe 80 to 90K net passive income, probably not going to allow the travel aspect there. So my intention in that freedom phase is to not just stop and do that. I'll continue working. I want to continue contributing. I love what I get to do, having conversations with epic people about investing and creating wealth and working towards financial freedom. Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, it's the best.
So I'll always continue doing that. Like this is one of my favorite days of the week, coming in and recording content. So I want to always do that. So I want there to be responsibility. I want there to be work. I want there to be meaning and purpose in my life. And I get that through this job that I'm currently doing. But then I also love investing. So I'm going to continue investing. And what got me to freedom will allow me to push that envelope a little bit further. So I'm not going to stop doing developments once I'm financially free. I'm going to continue doing them because I'll have the experience, I'll have the knowledge, I'll have the know-how, I'll have the confidence. So I'm going to continue doing that. So let's say I have 150K per year gross from just rent, passive income, whilst the continue investing and continuing to do developments requires work. So it's not passive income, but I want to do it. So that might allow me to add an extra $100,000 to $200,000 gross per year on top of that.
So one good project, even every couple of years where you make 300K would do that. Like, it doesn't have to be this crazy number of things.
No, I don't need to start building high-rise apartments. And like, whilst I say it'd be cool to do those big developments, I got no intention to. Maybe my journey as an investor will take me there, but I'm not putting that out there to the universe. Like, for me, it's all about this lifestyle, being able to do those things that I want to do and when I want to do them and with who I want to do them with. So it's all about lifestyle, spending time with family, providing for that family, you know, having access to the best food and things that are going to support my health, and then, you know, enjoying my hobbies and traveling and snowboarding and surfing. So that's freedom for me. Like, it's simple, easy. I think about that on a daily basis. I write that down on an annual basis. Like, I completely manifest that as frequently as I possibly can, because I know that by thinking about it, by setting the intention, by doing the work, it's just going to be inevitable. It's not an if, it's a when.
I love that. And the cool thing is, because you've completed accumulation, all you really have to do is consolidate. Like, it's done.
It's done.
Like, it really is. And this is the thing that comes with the financial piece side of the accumulation phase being done. Accumulation's really fun in its own right, but it's stressful and active. But accumulation, to do a couple of properties, anyone that's earning 100K can do that in 5 years. And then you're theoretically done for life if you buy the right 2 assets, unless you want to go further, which we've worked with people that have done 8 to 10.
And I
You
think
can go further if you want to go further, or you can cruise if you want to cruise.
And I think the title of the podcast, like, the secret to creating a passive income is consolidation.
100%. That's where 95% of the work is, right?
Yeah, that's the secret to doing it. And like, what got you there is what will get you there as well. But what about yourself? Like, what does your freedom phase look like? And are you there, or is it still a work in progress?
It's always a work in progress for me. Like, it's just my nature to rock my own boat. No, I like it as well.
Like, likes pushing rocks up hills.
Yeah, like, I'd say life's about continuing on the journey. Like, I just don't think there's an end point to self-actualization. I just believe that it's like a constant journey towards the person that you're created to be, or a constant journey of going back to the person you were created to be. You know what I mean? Like, taking the layers off.
Who you were when you were a kid. It's like, how do I get back to that?
Yeah, just like, I just enjoy all of that now. And there was a friend of mine, more like an acquaintance really, like one of our old referral partners, Ash, who was the solicitor that we referred clients to for the first 7 years of the business. Absolute legend. And he said to me, like, he was in his mid-40s or early 40s when I spoke to him about this, and he said, I was at a different phase, and I was like, man, I'm just like, I want to get out of this phase. Like, this phase, it was like the business version of the heavy part of accumulation when the banks say you can't do anything. And I was just like, I'm sick of being in fire. And he's like, I love being in it. And I couldn't understand it in my mid-30s, but I can understand it now that I'm getting a bit older, that at some point, I've heard Elon Musk say this as well, like, what is fun at the start becomes work and then becomes fun again. And investing in business have become so fun for me again, because it's all based on how can I help other people that I care about and the clients that we work with and make the world a better place in my little niche bubble of, thanks, Mum, for listening to this. to send it to dad. But yeah, like I feel like he got something that I'm just starting to get. I've heard Matthew McConaughey say it recently as well. Like the actor, just once you get comfortable as to what you were born here to do and really embrace, generally we get pigeonholed in investing and work in the things that we're great at, but sometimes they're not the things we necessarily love doing. Like I'm really, really good at specific things, but sometimes those things can be like my attention to detail is so high, which has made our business buy phenomenally good properties, but it also fucking drives you crazy in your personal life when you're handing over property and you're noticing 5,000 defects on a 4-bedroom home. And so it's like letting go of the sharp side of that, but embracing the nice side. So I don't know where that was going or why I was even saying any of that. But back to what freedom is to me. PPR debt-free, 100%.
Yeah, number one goal.
Yep. 2, maybe 3 investment properties debt-free. And debt-free to me doesn't mean getting the deed. Debt-free just means having it covered in offset account with a low dose. So let's say that the property's worth 1.2 mil and I owe 450K and that 450 is offsetting cash. Like a comfortable level that if I needed to go grab 2 or 3 deposits because it's a great time to buy, I could. A comfortable enough buffer that if the world ever hits the fan, that there's some cash there to get you through like 3 or 4 really shitty years. That's sort of what I'm looking for. Like definitely the lifestyle costs. So the base living costs being covered is where I'm sort of at now. Very, very, very small amount of extra income, which covers everything that's not fun in my life, basically. Like it covers all that stuff. It does cover, because my living costs are so low.
Yeah.
And so same as you, like there are expensive things that I own, like cars and caravans and a house. But the way that I've structured a lot of those things isn't putting like week to week pressure on my family. Like it's a big expense, but it's like a partner property can buy you a beautiful car as well. It doesn't have to be like selling that home in Mooloolaba, bought a caravan and a car and paid off half of the debt of another property. So like partner properties don't have to be. And I think for a lot of people listening to this, if you're not at that point where you're realizing that, I'm 15 years in, I'm 18 years into learning about it. Like it takes time. And the fruits of this stuff don't even start popping out till down the line, because there'll be a point where it's like, okay, my home's covered. My investment properties are relatively low debt and I'm earning enough to cover them and the properties are killing it. I'm just going to do a partner property in the next 3 years. I'm going to buy that one in Perth, make 300K. I'm going to get my dream car, caravan, boat, whatever it is. And I'm going to park money against my own home as well. Like,
love that.
So I think property can not just be used to get to where you want to be, but to fucking get the lifestyle that you want. Like you and I have given almost 140K to charity through this business in 2 and a bit years. That sort of shit doesn't happen without like partner properties as part of that journey, and having the more you have to give mentality.
Love that.
So giving's a monster part of it for me. I have a goal with you of giving $1 million. I can't see how the hell we're going to do it. Like some of these years, like taking a bloody brutal. Like, it's just not the same market that it was pre-COVID, but it's like however long it takes. So I just think that'd be a cool thing to do.
Yeah, and you've got to put the intention out there and slowly work towards it, even if there is no idea as to how it's going to happen.
Good. Like we've had weeks where we've lost money. We've had weeks where we've made money. We've had years where we've lost money, years where we've made money. But every week you and I choose to give $500 a week to charity. And it's like, and then if there's surplus or balloon, or each time I sell a property now, like I give some more. And it's like, it's cool. Like I just love being in that. I'm okay, even though there's so many more people doing insane stuff. But like how I'm measuring success is, how's my family the same as you? Like how is my wider family? Which of our friends are we helping? Who are we helping in our community of the small number of clients we take on? And then who's the worst in our Sunny Coast community? And like, I'm not giving my time because I've got my own little kids, but I'm giving cash to people that have time to invest in that.
And the more you have to give as well. So it becomes a part of that value proposition as to why I'm working towards this, is to be able to support those that weren't as fortunate as we were.
Without a doubt. And the same guy, Ash, whose wife is the CEO of this charity that we support, the Everyday Foundation. He said to me recently, you don't have to be the whole solution, you just have to be part of it. He can't give his time because he runs a really successful soliciting firm with young kids, but his wife can, and he gives a lot of money from his business to that so that she can thrive.
Love it.
A client, actually, Clay, the legend broker who was on the podcast recently, hit me up the other day and he's like, who's that charity you're working with? I really want to give something this year. And I was like, fuck yeah, bro. Like, that's cool even. Lifestyle is massive for me. Travel, family, friends in the future, kids now, surf trips. Like, that's what I want to do. I always want to four-wheel drive because I love caravanning as well. Like, it's just my happy place, no technology, something I want to do forever, full switch off. For me, freedom is being present with my kids in the Arvo when they get home. 100% being fully dialed in on the weekends with them. And then for me now, like now that I've got my base living costs, you've seen in the last few years, like I try and take massive amounts of the school holidays on. So I run 4 seasons a year in my work life, and I go like sprint seasons, 12 weeks, 1 term, 2-week break, 12 weeks, 2-week break. And by doing that, I'm feeling more refreshed and excited to get back to work too. Like, it's like a double-edged sword thing. It's like, it's good for my family, but I'm gagging to get back to helping people at work too.
Exactly.
And it's really cool. Like, it started with Fridays off, which you've given yourself the gift of. So it's like, what's the right amount of dose?
Yeah.
It's always changing. I want something that I've realized, like writing down what freedom means to me financially is like, part of the reason I want, because I'm not living off the passive income from my properties right now. It's just literally going into the bank account. And then like it's covering imaginary properties in the future. But I've realized, just even sitting down and doing this off camera with you this morning, like I want the properties that I own outright to completely cover the deposits and the costs associated with partner properties in the future. Like, how cool would it be if you had your 150 giving you 80 net, and that was like 2 negatively geared properties in Melbourne when it's going to crank that are worth $1 million each. And you're just like, your properties are covering your partner properties, but you're not owning Melbourne to hold them to 60. You're owning them to rinse the market in the 5 years it does what Brisbane and Perth are doing. And you just go, shit, yeah, that was nothing of mine. The passive income covered the deposits. The passive income covered the holding costs. I literally just made 600K on 2 properties from doing nothing.
And the wild thing is, and it's brutal but true, is like money does make money. So once you get there, it's like Monopoly. Like when you are playing the game of Monopoly and you're the one with, the best house, like the best properties, and then you build houses on them, and it's just, you're rinsing everyone, and it's like you're the one in the driver's seat with the negotiation power that's like capturing all of this rent that's coming in. And it's a heavy reality of the world that we live in, and that's why the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. Whether or not you like agree with it from a values standpoint, it is what it is. It's bigger than us. We can't change it. So once you get to that point, it's like, money makes money, but what we're intending to do with that is give it back in meaningful ways.
It's all, in my opinion, on loan. Like, I'm the custodian of the skills that I've built and the decisions that I've made.
Not going to be here in 100 years.
In my will, it will all go to my kids and charity, and that's it. 50. It was funny sitting down with the chick who wrote the will, and she's like, where do you want your money to go? And I'm like, I want 50% to go to charity. And she's like, what? And I'm like, isn't that what everyone's like attempting to do in their lifetime? She's like, I think you guys should think about that a little bit more. And Lisa's like, yeah, I think we should think about it. I'm like, I'm clear that this isn't my money, that I was born to help people achieve choices in their life sooner than 75 and ending up on the pension. And so it's like, it is on loan. I'm going to help as many people as I possibly can. And I don't need much. Like, there's people that need so much more than you and I need. Like, I just need like good surfboards, caravan. The house that I'm in is enough for 10 lifetimes.
Yeah. And sometimes like giving it all to your kids isn't the best thing for your kids.
We're
Like
going to live to 100, man. What am I going to give these kids some fucking money when they're 80?
exactly
Like,
right.
yeah, let's see if that's going to mean
Great
anything to them.
grandkids, you know.
Yeah, like
It's so
great
true.
grandkids are going to be set. They'll definitely go and blow it all. Um, look after kids was the next thing that freedom meant for me. So some of the things that I've been thinking about, like one of our clients recently, I forget his name, but you know the legend that I'm talking about, who is the accountant that works for this 6 really wealthy family.
Yeah.
Hopefully his name comes back to me, but I'm sorry, bro, because I know he listens to our potties as well. But me and him
Crystal.
had the best conversation. Yeah, him, mum, and Crystal, as I said.
No. Crystal would know immediately.
Crystal would know.
Yeah.
But him and I sat down for an hour and a half the other day, and I said, these families are worth over $500 million to $1 billion, right? And I said, what are these families doing? And he said, so much of what they're doing is educating the next generation and putting things in place so that there's recession planning going on.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what are some of the things they do? And he said, well, they might have like a family trust that the kids can write to get a grant for their university degree. So the university degree is covered. Or for me, the time that you really need help from your parents isn't the first 10K or 50K for your first property. You should save that, or you should, get 10K like we both did from Dad.
And spend it on a holiday overseas.
Yes. But no, like I think what I think a gift is like I look at everyone around us at the moment that's doing well but tough because of 7% interest rates and higher debt on their home. And I'm like, what if your parents could step in and you've got an 800K deposit and go, here's 400K. How much pressure would that take off our sisters? Like how much pressure would that take off all of our friends that are working 2 jobs and just killing it but struggling? And I think, well, that's something that I'd like to do as well. Like I don't necessarily want to give them their first deposit. I want to see them go through it and hold their hand with knowledge and skills. But when it gets really hard and they're a few kids deep, I want to hook them up.
Yeah. And allow them that opportunity to be a present parent at that stage of life and spend those meaningful years together.
Big time. Like once I know that they're solid with their partner, like that they're in the thick of it, that they've done the hard yards, like there's a gift that I can give them, which is like, here's your home paid off.
Yeah.
And how I'm going to do that is a couple of partner properties that I sell down the line.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hold these properties and they're going to give the gift. So they're the things I'm thinking, like cars. If the kids say 50%, then we'll chuck in 50%. And I think as you start thinking above your day-to-day survival living to, okay, I've got me sorted, now I've got my family sorted, then it becomes like, well, why are you doing anything? For me, it's all service orientated.
I love it, man. And that's a plan. And whether or not, like I know for me personally, it's, a matter of when, not if. And I just truly believe in that because like I love the lifestyle that's got me to where I am, but I don't intend to make any changes on that. I'll probably actually double down and try and get better at the things that have got me to where I am right now. It's so beautiful that we get to have these conversations and share these ideas with ourselves and everybody else. And like we've put a lot of
ourselves.
Yeah, I know, right? It's literally just for us to catch up. And we hope that when people are listening, you look at the drop-off rate on the podcast and it's like gets to the end, nobody's listening anymore anyway. But we love the fact that like we get to do this, and this is our goals because like we've put so much focused energy into like thinking about what we want, how we're going to get there, and we do what's required to sort of make it happen. So I think for everybody listening to this, like you kind of need to think about, okay, well, where am I at right now, and what's an idea of where I want to be in the future? And I think you've always said just working towards replacing your annual salary is a great place to start, but I also think diving deep into the lifestyle that you want to be living when you get to where you want to be as well. If you don't know the number that you're working towards, think about the lifestyle and what do you need to create that lifestyle. And that's why for me, it's a conservative goal because I know the lifestyle that I want to be living doesn't require a ridiculous amount of money. But that might be different for somebody else who wants, the finer things in life. What's that new song from Post Malone? You've got to thank some people have a thank for the finer things.
I've got to listen to that. Hey,
It's awesome.
What I think, just to round it out for me personally, is something that the gift I wish I could have given myself was hindsight. but you can't see it until you've done it with 2020 vision. And so,
Unless you learn how to learn through observation.
yeah, exactly. And it's something that you've been phenomenally good at in the last 8 years. And it's meant that your journey to this point has been far less bumpy than people like me that bashed into things until they figured it out. And you can learn from other people.
For podcasts.
You want to learn how to do weights, watch some dude on shorts on YouTube. Like, you want to learn how to invest, listen to some people that are already financially free or fully set up and just have the time delay. But I think the biggest thing I wish I could have said to myself is that it takes longer than you think it will. And you cannot judge your 2-year results from someone that's at year 8. You can't judge year 8 results from someone that's at year 30. Time is what compound growth really loves, and it will be phenomenal where you end up if you start today and where you're at 5 years, 10 years, 15, 30 years from today. Like, you can't even believe what investing in high quality stocks or property will do for your long-term future until you've been in it long enough to see what really happens. And it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. And it's exciting, and I'm so grateful, and I'm so excited to help more and more people realize their full potential and their best lives through what we do.
Love it. Thanks,
Awesome.
bro.
If you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 6 months, then the team and I at Pumped on Property would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. To book the session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that free strategy session button. Now, in the session, we'll talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and educate you deeply on the Australian property market. You can then take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each month. Either way, we look forward to continuing to help you build your property portfolio with confidence on your journey to financial freedom.